Hey everyone, welcome back to another AccuColor webinar series. Today we have Post Like a Pro, episode 2, Calibrate Your Environment. Today's truly a special event. We got the whole crew back together again. Simon Walker, thank you for joining. Max Saharo, thank you for joining. And Tony Berry Jr., thank you for joining. Welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you for having us. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. For the second time, in fact.
Indeed. You got to deal with us for one more too.
I'm looking forward to it, yeah.
How was NAB, Tony? I heard that you were there.
I was there, and so was Simon. I was kind of like hanging on his coattails the whole time.
Very nice.
It's a blur now.
It is a blur. We're ready for two more major conventions happening pretty soon. And if anybody's in Los Angeles, SIGGRAPH is coming soon too.
That is
so
true.
We'll see you there in person. Gotta love the in-person stuff coming back.
Sure, for sure. So looks like we're filling up. People are joining now. Just want to let everybody know, please stay tuned. We have two pretty big giveaways during this live webinar, so please stay tuned. We're gonna draw 2 lucky names from all the live attendees. We'll do that later towards the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned for that. We'll tell you about the prizes later. But yeah, everyone, I want to kick it off to the crew here. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end. So send in your questions in chat or in Q&A, and I'll let you guys take it away from me.
Well, hey, everyone. If you didn't catch it last time, we'll just do a quick intro about what we do and who we are. I'm Simon Walker. I'm head of training and learning at Maxon, and we have talked for many times, in fact, with these 2 talented trainers I've got here, for about the grading process and all things production line. So that's another chance for us to just talk about things and share some knowledge and always learn something as well, which is very handy.
Thank you, Simon. Like Simon, I do training with Maxon, except Simon's my boss. And my colleague here, Max, who's joining us in Germany. I'm based in Los Angeles, and Simon is in a really great part of the West Coast in Portland.
West Oregon.
West Oregon, that's right. So I guess maybe we should talk about what we're going to talk about today in general.
Absolutely.
And Simon, do you want to play our moderator for this beginning part, Simon? Or would you mind playing our moderator?
Essentially, what we're talking about is that we're going to be looking at how do you get into viewing the right color, and what is the right color, and how do you then set that up on your monitor, and which cables do you use, and how do you then go around choosing which particular display modes, and what happens when you're working in different apps? How do you then choose the color? How do you then make things easier for yourself to actually manage things on the screen? And so there's some pragmatic things and some theory things that we're going to do. We're also going to look at how you then would go about understanding what is color correction in terms of the scopes and how a color image is put together. And we got a nice few little tips about that as well. And we're going to do an actual color correction session, if you like, right towards the end. But it's some pragmatic detail, some theory detail, all those sorts of things that you typically would need to know. Plus, there is some information about some of our friends, because Tony and Max know a whole bunch of grading specialists and professionals, and so they are constantly chatting to them and providing their little bits of tidbits. And you've got some photos of their setups to show as well. That's one question we get asked all the time: what is a good grading setup? So, for example, I'm currently representing the worst possible grading setup because I've the slightly diffused light coming and streaming in through the window. So this isn't my usual grading room. And Tony and Max have got some better examples of that. So, but that's the general sort of thing that we're going to be covering in the next, I suppose, 40 or 50 minutes.
Yep. Couldn't have said it better. That was great.
Actually, behind Simon, that's a HDR monitor behind Simon right there.
Yes, it's a wall. It's actually a big LED wall.
Exactly.
He's in a virtual production space somewhere in Western Oregon. So anyway, I guess since Simon nailed all those points, thank you very much, Simon. We'll jump right in just for time's sake and to give us a little bit more time on the back end to get interactive with everybody so we can tackle any Q&A that you may have. If we happen to breeze by anything, it's just for time. Again, Q&A, we'll open that up afterward. So we'll just jump right in and talk about, I'll share a photo of my desk reluctantly, and then I'll share a photo of a friend of mine's desk who's a legit colorist. I'm more of the online editor, and I do believe that most people think that you need to be working inside of a dark cave in order to create that true environment, but that's not exactly true. You do need some light, and Simon has a little experiment we'll talk about a little bit later about the way that you view color when you're in absolute darkness is completely different from having a little bit of ambiance and neutral color. So let's just talk about while you're at your desk, right? Calibrating the color and the lighting at your desk and the ambiance. And there's a few different things you can do. I personally have like several options here because I want my desk to feel like this warm, charming place to work and not like a really dark bat cave and looking like, like I'm in the middle of some undisclosed location in some kind of bunker. I work at a desk, but it feels very warm and ambient, and it has a good calibrated environment in here. So let me start with, I'll showcase a photo or two. Let me share my screen here and we'll dive right in. Here we go. Okay, should be able to see my desktop. Now let me load up a photo. So here is my desk right here. And I blurred a few things just so I don't have to explain anything about anybody's projects or works or different brands or whatever, right? Minus the few you see here on my desk. So long story short, I have a couple of things going on. One thing that you don't see in the photo that I have just off site here is this nice little warm light, which is battery operated, generic Amazon thing that you could buy for a couple of bucks. But I do like to have a nice warm light at my desk, which kind of lets me see my keyboard, right, without having the keyboard flashing with the LEDs. So I have this, it's a BenQ model right here, and I'll take it off here and I'll show it to you. It's called a Screen Bar Halo. And this right here will provide you some light on the back of your monitor, provide you some light on the front end, and kind of you can tone it down, change the color temperature, and it's all done with this really cool little Bluetooth controller. So Bluetooth controller kind of looks like this, and it's like a hockey puck, and we're gonna get into the hockey puck section here in just a moment. But long story short is, my desk kind of has to feel nice and not necessarily glowing, but I don't want to be staring at really bright screens up close and personal. I personally have 27-inch monitors. A lot of people like to go with the 32s. I wear contacts right now, and I'm not trying to wear Coke bottles for glasses. So, I'm trying to keep my eyesight a little bit longer. So I keep the 27s and I keep them at a distance. I warm up the desk with some nice ambiance, and I use the screen bar here. And sometimes I have, a nice little ambient light on the side, which, you can pick up anything these days. It's LED at a reasonable price. So besides that, what's really important is not just calibrating what your desk environment looks like, right? Because these are things that you're going to see in your peripheral on top of what you see directly in front of you and what you're paying attention to. So let me stop sharing this and let me show you the Display Pilot. Now, the Display Pilot, this is software that's made for your BenQ monitor, but you can also, I'm told, right, that you can use this with generic monitors as well that are different brands, and it's not just only for BenQ monitors. But let me just kind of step you through it, and let's talk quickly about if you are using monitors nowadays. If you bought a monitor in the last few years, even within the last 5 years, right, most people are plugged up via HDMI, or you may be plugged up still with a dongle, right, via HDMI to some kind of DVI or you didn't want to give up your old Apple monitor or something like that, or you inherited a monitor, or you need a second monitor. But one thing is true is like most work, especially in post-production, you want to have 10-bit. And having 10-bit means that you have the correct cables, the correct connections, and you do not go via HDMI for all monitors. So with the monitors that I'm using currently, you need to use Thunderbolt in order to achieve having full 10-bit color. So if you're using HDMI, make sure it's an HDMI 2.1 and not an HDMI 2.0. No, if you're on a Mac, Macs that are within the last 3 years, I think, have HDMI 2.0 ports, and then other Macs, newer Macs, M2, M1, I want to say, all will have HDMI 2.1. So biggest difference is that it's so subtle, but it's a matter of seeing those fine pixels, seeing where the shadow lays, seeing where your gradients are. Having 10-bit image, having a 10-bit image really matters. So let's just hop away from the connection points and hop over to this display pilot, and I'll talk a little bit about it. Simon can chime in, and what I'll do is I'll show you on my setup. I have this little hockey puck thing. I don't know if you can see it, but let me share an image of what it looks like. And I have it programmed to where if I want to work in HDR, if I want to work in 709, or if I want to work in sRGB or P3 color space, I have mine programmed to 1 is P3, 2 is 709, and 3 is sRGB. And you can even adjust the brightness of your monitor with this hockey puck. And basically, that dial right here will dial into your settings, and you can choose and kind of navigate your menus, your on-screen display with this hockey puck. So this is specifically to BenQ monitors. So let me just hop out of that, go right back here to Display Pilot, and just kind of talk about our color modes, right? So the popular color modes, the ones that you use and work in when you're working in post-production, right, is P3 color space, right? And there's 2 types. Then there's also Rec 709. And then, of course, what most monitors have is the sRGB. You can also set this up in your OS so you can work with HDR. It's grayed out right now because I don't have it set up in my OS as HDR. When I'm ready to be in HDR, all you got to do is go to your display settings on your Mac and PC, same thing. Make sure that you enable that. And if you have the capability, then now you can enable that inside of Display Pilot. Simon, did you want to chime in with anything?
But Tony, it might be useful just to talk about why would you want to be talking about a different color space, because designers who are working in sRGB work in a different color space to, say, editors who are dealing with higher bit depth footage. So that's worth mentioning. There's also something I wanted to ask you about your setup. If you could bring back your photo of your setup. Why the question I want, I know you know the answer to this, but I just wanted to talk out loud. The advantage of having that light behind the monitors. It's to do with your eyesight and in keeping your eyes not being over tired.
Yes.
Keeping them
not being in a bat cave.
Yeah.
So the bias lighting and one way to set this all up is just to kind of have some warm glow behind your monitor. A lot of people even use those like LED strips. I've seen that, and people put that on the back of their TVs. But it's just easier on the eyes. It creates this better environment, so your eyes are not necessarily just fixated on really bright pixels on 2 giant screens right in front of your face.
And how neutral do you have to keep the rest of your grading suite? Because we hear a lot of people painting it as 18% gray to have it not giving a vibrant color cast, if you like, onto your eyes. Obviously, I'm not talking painting it bright red or so on, but how much do you get away with that in your setup?
Well, how about I'm going to show you somebody who's a professional colorist, and I'll show you their desk, and then that'll give you a better understanding. Because for me, I'm kind of that weird hybrid, right? So here is my buddy Gino, who's recently moved here to Burbank. And his company is called Gamma Post House. And basically he's hung this gray sheet, which is a neutral, like it's a way to neutralize your eyes, and 18% gray, or, you know, I speak that language to a certain degree, so please fill in the blanks, Max or Simon. But he's hung this sheet here behind, so he doesn't necessarily, when he's working with color, he's looking at neutral colors in the background in his peripheral, and he's not necessarily looking at highly saturated colors or images of, you know, family members or something like that. So he's kind of, it also is something that's going on. You have in the back of your mind, right? You don't want to be like running these other operations in your mind, like thinking about all these different things. You want to focus on the work. So in order to focus on the work, you got to neutralize what's at your desk and have yourself a nice, simple canvas, so you can really focus at the task at hand, if that helps. But this right here is more of a professional setup compared to mine, which is kind of a hybrid of, this is my house, I love it, and you know, and I can create that nice warm ambiance. But as far as somebody who just works in color correction, color grading, this is something that's more similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Max.
that's probably, I'm sorry, Simon, to cut you. That's probably trigger some questions in the audience, among the audience. By the way, I saw Kent in the questions earlier. Hey, Kent, nice to see you here. What a coincidence, right? And the fact that a lot of like professionals working with this neutral paint and neutral environment, this probably like trigger questions in the environment, in the audience. Why does it have to be neutral? And just for that, I actually prepare like a very tiny presentations for you guys, if you have the time and if you want to listen to me rambling about it. If I may, Tony, I'll steal your screen share.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I hope you can see my screen. Do you see like a very nice background there? Right. What I want to say is that Simon and Tony, perhaps it's a little bit too general, but it's kind of obvious, right? Whenever we are working with the post-productions and whenever we are working with the content that we want to deliver, we need to understand who is our audience, right? We're not delivering this. We're not mastering our piece. We're not doing this work for our pets. We're not doing it for our cat. We're not doing it for our dogs. We're doing it for our fellow human audience, right? By understanding that we are delivering this piece or like our content to our human audience, we can be smart a little bit and then think, how does our audience works? And one big thing about that is human visions, right? Drum rolls, boom, 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 human vision. The thing about human visions, although it's sometimes like very like overlooked, there are some categories there are some properties of human visions that I think if you spend a little bit time researching on it, it may help you a lot more. For example, we probably know that as human, we have two visions in our eyes, right? We have the binocular visions whenever we are focusing and using the two eyeballs that we have. And we are also having the visions on the side, which is called the peripheral visions, right? And normally in our binocular visions, maybe I'm moving too fast. In our binocular visions, those are normally the area that we are focusing into. And then the area surrounding the binocular visions, our binocular visions, is called the peripheral. And this is something that we cannot get away from. This is like just happened. So for example, if you're focusing on the center of the image or center of your gaze, whenever you're walking in London, for example, like you see in the pictures, whenever you're focusing on the middle, on that circle, your binocular visions is playing part in that gaze, while the area that is out of focus surrounding it, it's where your peripheral visions kicking in. What's tricky about it is that our peripheral visions is way much more sensitive to the change of lightness, to the change of contrast, and brightness rather than the change of color. It can still represent color, but it is not as accurate as our binocular central visions. And that has something to do with how color is actually works, right? So, for example, when we are seeing a red apple, the philosophical questions here, is the apple really red? The thing is that the apple itself is not emitting red color. What it does is that color needs three ingredients to be able to be perceived. It needs the source of light, it needs the receptor, and then it also needs the processor. In this case, we need the source of light, we need the eyes, we need our eyes, and we need our brains to perceive that information, right? So the source of light is emitting the wavelength of the wavelength of energy, and then it is bouncing around in objects. And for example, on the red apple, it will absorb all the other wavelengths while it is also bouncing back the warmth with wavelength. In this case, the red, the green, the yellow, and the orange wavelength, right? And those informations then be processed by our eyes. It comes to our eyes and it needs to be processed as a signal that will be sent into our brain. And our brain will, how do you call it? It will process that as a color red or any specific color. But how does it process? In our eyes, there are some photoreceptor cells that is responsible for this process. And there are two types of photoreceptor cells in our eyes. The cone cells, which is like the cells that is responsible for the colored visions, and the rod cells. And the rod cells are actually the photoreceptor cells that is responsible for the changings in brightness and in contrast, luminance. Here is funny fact. Here is like interesting fact. We have more cone cells in our binocular visions in the center of the eyes. Meanwhile, in our part of the eyes, whenever we are using it as a peripheral visions, those lies the most rod cells. By understanding that means that our peripheral visions can still see color, but it is not as accurate as our central and binocular visions. Take, for example, when you are gazing at an object in the bright daylight, and then you are coming into a very dark room, you probably can still see the object. That's because we have way much more rod cells in our eyes compared to cone cells. But then you probably hardly can see the real color, the color of that object. That's because of the exclusions of the lights, right? And we can still detect the object. We can still see and detect the object, but we cannot see the color any longer. And that's just one properties that we need to understand, right? The peripheral visions of human visions. The second one is also what the fancy term called is the chromatic adaptations, that our eyes adapts. So for example, if you're going out in a campfire with your friends, drinking some beers, enjoying the time, having good time, when you're sitting around the bonfire, you probably see that everything is very reddish, yellow, warm. But at some point when you're sitting there long enough, everything will look neutral. That's because our eyes compensate and neutralize these things. So understanding these things probably really can help you to set up your environment. So take, for example, this image. This is like probably like the most common scenario whenever we are mastering our image, right? We're working with a screen that is which is like 24, 25, 27 inch, or even like 32 inch. Right? So if you put your monitor in a comfortable distance away from you, probably 1 meter or something like that, you probably can still focus on that one particular monitor in the center of your visions. But then when you are focusing on that certain part, remember, we still have the peripheral visions. right? So our peripheral visions is reading the environment behind the monitor and surrounding the monitor nearby. And by, how do you call it? By managing those environment, you probably could get a very good head start. And one way of managing that environment is adjusting the brightness and also adjusting the color. And the thing is, like, just imagine if you are mastering an image which is like very blue in your monitor, right? But then your surrounding is like completely covered with all like yellowish poster.
Orange, yeah.
And by seeing that, you probably already decide, you probably have like the feeling that your image is contrasty enough. I don't need to I don't need to push the contrast level as hard as I supposed to, right? But that's just because your environment is playing trick on you. Our peripheral visions is actually playing trick on us whenever we're doing that. So ideally, whenever we are having this scenario, taming the environment down, that could be like a really nice a start, a head start. And I even say that. How do you call it? I lost my word. So that's one scenario. It must be different though when we are mastering our image. And for example, let me show the navigator. So it must be different when we are like mastering our image in the big theater screen, for example, right? So probably whenever we are having this luxury, mastering our image in a very big screen in front of us, the environment, although it's still important to have it managed, probably you can get away with a slightly less managed environment, I would say. But then the things, the other things here, like the focus probably shift a little bit. Instead of like how do you call it, anticipating for your environment, you probably need to anticipate more on the content of your image itself. Just imagine if you have like a subject with a blue shirt standing on the left side of the screen, and on the right hand side of the screen there will be like a field of sunflower. Then you probably have exactly the same how do you call it, situations like the previous scenario with a yellow wall and blue screen, right? So those are the things that you need to how do you call it, take into considerations. And that's why probably Tony's friend and other professional colorists probably would like to put the 18% neutral gray background to at the back of the monitor. That is to offset your eyes so that you know that your peripheral visions is always gazing at the neutral environment. And that's probably the best way that you can do, having a neutral environment at the back of your screen to not playing game on your visions. And as you can see also in the grading theater, the area probably also I also said that the environment might not be that important, but biasing the lighting in the ambience lighting in the room probably is a very good idea. Because of what? Because we want to avoid the eye fatigue, right? Just imagine this situations, which is like, this is, by the way,
So common.
This is my grading environment, by the way, guys. So I have the luxury to be able to turn my environment pitch black, and that is really nice whenever I need it. But just imagine if you're working like this, probably after 15 minutes, you feel like strained in your eyes, and you don't want that. And one way that you can avoid that is by just simply putting, like, for example, the very minimum setup is that you can at least put like the bias light behind your monitor. Why behind your monitor? Because those are your central gaze, and you want the area surrounded is like as comfortable as much as possible, right? So that you can work longer, and you're gazing in the very neutral environment. And I also put like 2 other lights on the left and right. So whenever those lights are switched on, you can feel that, you work in a very comfortable environment while you have like a very neutral background to offset your eyes. So anytime you start to, for example, work like longer period of hours, just, take a break, gaze around in this neutral environment, or the best one is even to go out and reset your visions. And that's probably where most the magic happens, is that, pause, go out, enjoy the break, and come back and realize, oops, I made the grade too red. Right. I think
that's a very common thing to do. Absolutely.
yes.
And I try and avoid the bad habit of then taking that break to check my phone or look at another screen, because that's not going to help either.
Yes. And one tricks that you can also do if you cannot afford going out for a walk or something like that, but that's actually the best. But if you cannot do that, what I would how do you call it, recommend is that putting pure color in your monitor. So you can like output 18% gray and then output red, green, and blue, so that your eyes resets. It's like, okay, that's 18% gray, that's red, that's green, and that's blue for some times. And then after that, go back to your project again. All right, that's actually the end of my presentations. I hope
interesting question for you, Max, or
yes,
kind of commentary. It's useful to understand, as you say, the makeup of your eyesight, so that you're seeing different colors from different parts of your eyes. So like straight ahead versus peripheral. And that's essentially what is governing, making sure that you're more accurate when you're staring dead ahead. So that's why that was the answer, wasn't it? That's why it's important that you've got this light behind the monitor.
Yes. First, eye strain. Second is to guarantee the best outcome for your work, right? And by the way, if you really want to learn more about this subject, I really recommend you to do your research about how human eyes work, how human vision works, and you'll stumble upon like really fascinating informations by doing that.
So how does this translate to pragmatic upgrading of the setup? So you've got your monitors set up in the correct space for editing, but how would you then compare that with, say, if you're editing in Rec 709 for SDR versus something that you work in log?
This is what actually really nice. The picture that I brought up here is that, I have my reference monitor in the middle, which is showing me the Rec 709 color space. And the one on the right is actually my BenQ PD32. That is a clean feed coming from the operating system. So the thing that we need to understand here is that the reference monitor signal is a pure signal that is non-affected by the operating system, right? And whenever you want to grade using reference monitor, I think that is the very first thing that you need to be aware about. You cannot just simply like, okay, I want to like send my signal from my computer and just hook it up in the external monitor and call it reference monitor. Probably you don't want to do that. Why? Because of the operating system color management. What you want to do is that the best practice is to send out a pure RGB 4444 signal to your reference monitor, which is like hardware calibrated. You can upload a lot into your monitor. to hardware calibrate your monitor. And then after that, viewing those pure signals in the Rec 709 space, which is like what we have in this situation at here, the situations that we are looking here. And by having a second monitor, which is like just a clean feed coming from the applications, that is really nice, so that you can really see what is actually your audience out there is seeing. Because when you are mastering your image, you want to hit the exactly in the middle of your target as you know, as accurate as possible, so that whenever you are mastering in a very accurate monitor, the, how do you call it, the difference that you get in the other monitors will not vary that much. Just imagine like the how do you call it, the analogy, probably like if you're mastering your music in the slightly bassy or trebly speakers, you probably got like less trebly or less bassy, depends on which speakers that you're mastering your music on, right? But by mastering in a very neutral and very accurate monitor, you can guarantee that the shift between those monitor will not be that much. So by having like one reference monitor and one clean feed monitors, you can really see the difference between like the how do you call it, the one that you're seeing in your grading studio, and probably the stuff that you are going to upload online, and probably how the audience will see it. One thing
Got a
that
question, Max.
Yeah.
Sorry, question. Shadrach makes a good point talking about different types of gray and talking about different variances. Is there a specific one you should go for, or how does that work?
Yeah. I think you're mentioning about gray paint, right, Shadrach? If I may, probably I should just like mention this. The display lighting that I got is like from a company called Media Light, and they also sell 18% gray paint. But here is the case: whenever you are like, whenever you are working in a professional situations and you want to guarantee everything to be like perfect, I mean, any LED probably could work. But if you want to, you can like up your game a little bit and use like an LED with a high CRE, which is which in abbreviations for color rendering index. The higher a CRE an LED has, the more it can reproduce an accurate color. And then about the 18% gray, if you can get as close as possible in the for you know, for your environment, for your paint environment, do it. And if you cannot do that, one nice trick that you can do is that you can just get like this 18% gray photo paper, background paper, and you can just use that. Or what I did in my case is that I took a gray cart to a paint shop and asked them to mix exactly that that paint. And that's I think like things that you can do out there, Shadrach. Hope that helps.
Great
So
stuff.
quick pivot. I think first
what
of all,
I
I did
exactly. Sorry, Tony. I forgot
no
one
worries.
thing. The one that I want to come back to these pictures that we are seeing here. And as I mentioned before, I have my reference monitor right on the middle, and I have like the BenQ PD32 right at the right hand side of my side here. But what you can see that there's not much different at all. And because you know what, because BenQ PD32 is supporting like sRGB and Rec 709, it's covering them 100%. So you can get like a peace of mind working with these monitors.
Okay, quick pivot.
Yes.
Let's just take a quick break between subjects to just remind everybody that we're doing some giveaways at the end of this. We're going to give away the screen bar, the BenQ screen bar Halo. We're also going to give away Maxon 1 for 6 months. And that includes all the plugins, all the programs, everything that Maxon makes all in one package for 6 whole months. So we will be at the end, we will draw some numbers and shout out 2 lucky winners. But just wanted to put that out there, so don't disappear halfway through. We got a lot more interesting things to talk about. So Simon, just want to do a quick pivot back to, let's talk about monitors, and like part of your environment is not just externally, but internally on your machine. I did want to add one thing, since everybody's talking about, we're talking about paint on the walls, we're talking about, you know, kind of what's your canvas behind your monitors, but what about what's on your monitors? And I've seen people have family photos as their backdrop, some crazy, you know, abstract image as their backdrop, but you really want to neutralize your mind as well when you're working on some of these creative things. And, you know, that's why, like, if you're on a Mac OS or if you're on a PC, you can just use this like very basic, simple backdrops that are not too hard on the eyes, meaning not something that's bright white, and it doesn't have to be completely black. You can pick a nice, you know, neutral background. It could be neutral, like some sort of blue, but just a little bit muted. You don't really want to have a really bright, super saturated, creative image in the background while you're working on something that's, you know, that you're supposed to spend your mind and your time on. So I highly recommend just go with some kind of simple backdrop on your monitors. I'll share my screen in the meantime so I can practice here what I'm preaching. So,
Hey, Tony, just a quick aside. Iglo
sure.
has got a question or a comment. What about the other walls of the room, i.e. not behind the monitors? What about the same color in the wall directly behind the monitors too, and all behind you? So that my quick take on that would be, it depends on how much of that color is being reflected around the room. So if it's reasonably muted, then it's fine, I think.
Yeah.
And it's your peripheral, not necessarily what's right at hand.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if you can afford to do that, you need to pay attention to the wall right behind your monitor and to the wall right behind you, so that, you know, those reflective color will not be like playing like a role on that Aglow. And one more thing, if you can afford it, like, you know, if you have the luxury to dim out your environment, like what I do, if you can guarantee like a pitch black, that would be also nice.
Yes. And also, you know, like this is my Zoom backdrop and it looks like a rotting fence at the beach. But at the same time, like, you know, your environment in front of you is for what you're doing at the computer. Your environment behind you is just simply like, that's your ambiance. It's not, and yes, you definitely don't have eyes behind you. I mean, or maybe you do. But
I also have like colorful lighting right over there. So yeah, I'm guilty.
And there was a question about like, can you change colors? Yeah, absolutely, you can change colors. If you want to work in an all green environment, feel free. If you're doing something that has to do with color correction, then that's when you really want to have this bias lighting. When you're not doing color correction and you're doing editing or whatever it is, whatever gets you in the mood and makes you feel creative, like do that for your mind to stay in the creative zone. So there's nothing wrong with changing the color of the lighting, just in case you do have a lot of different colorful LEDs. So nothing wrong with that. I do it myself. But yeah, back to the other canvas, which is right on your monitor when we're talking about pixels here. So when it comes to pixels and it comes to what we're looking at, right, I'm gonna once again just jump back into Display Pilot, and I currently have my my hockey puck, which I showed you before. I'll pull up another picture, and I'll talk about a couple of these things here. Let me cancel out this. We're moving on from this topic. If we want to talk about it during Q&A, we totally can. Right here, here's the hockey puck. And then also I want to show you another thing that you can do inside of this software here, right, is that you can do this kind of split. So if you wanted to see something in HDR and in SDR, you can do a kind of split right on your screen. I don't have my computer set up for HDR right now, but I can set this up. If we go down to dual view, you can turn this on and you can see half of P3 and you could see half of 709 if you want. And that kind of gives you an idea, especially if you're doing any kind of color correction. You can see how things look like when they have their full gamut of color. And then once you start crunching them down and putting them inside of a Rec 709 space, you can see them displayed like that.
So you
this
be
is
able to do that side by side, just quickly turn it on and then just get a quick gauge.
yeah. So yeah, when you do that, I don't know if you can you see that over the Zoom? I'll turn that off. And then another thing is too, like if you're on a BenQ monitor, you're going to see your on-screen display all pop up, and it'll break down and tell you, on the right, it'll tell me I have P3 on the left and this other form of P3 on the right, and I can change that to 709 if I want. This is all based on what your current, and then you just pick which one you want to compare it to. So the main would be what you already have your color space set to, and then the dual view would be what you're picking right here. So right now, currently, I have my color mode and display P3. Another thing, we go down here, you can see what I was talking about before, right? Is I'm set up and I'm using mine because I have that PD 2725U. You can see it right here. I also have on the other side, I have a 2705U, which is basically, the low end version of my main monitor. My main monitor, which is also an interface monitor, I have my higher end monitor, and then the other one is in this portrait mode, tall, so I can view the internet and all these lovely Teams chats and things that we have to do these days when working. So I make a really long, tall monitor so I can do all my internet and all my tedious tasks and answering questions on the right side, and then work and do my edits on the left. It's also great if you're in an analyst. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Tony. Question for you. Bert's asking, when would you use P3 and when would you use Rec 709?
Okay. So it depends on like what your delivery is, and if you're like sometimes if you have to do any kind of theatrical delivery, if you have to do anything that's going to a projector, P3 is more for theatrical. It's also, this could be a max answer too. But yeah, for me, like it's more for if you're doing something for theatrical, if you're doing something that's going to be projected, that color space is usually in P3 color space. And it's really dependent on your deliverable. And also when you're in 709, things are a little bit more crunched. If you want to view them, let me see if I can switch this here. Let me turn off my dual view, by the way. But hopefully that answers the question. Is it's really for your deliverable. So if your deliverable is P3 for that theatrical, and it's going to be projected, then that's usually in a P3 color space. But most stuff is going to be in Rec 709.
So
I also would like to add like a casual answer to that,
Sure.
So whenever you're using your monitor to watch Netflix, for example, and you happen to have like a HDR available, like you subscribe for an HDR subscriptions, and try to like change your monitor, your Rec 709 monitors to P3, and you'll see a more vibrant color. That's because like most of the HDR delivery are aimed for P3 color space. So when you can switch your monitor into P3, you can enjoy the content way much more, how do you call it, better than.
I would say it's like a higher ceiling. You
Exactly.
have a higher ceiling of color.
That's probably why whenever you are comparing like two laptops, like for example, like some other random laptop with MacBook, for example, you probably have like these impressions of why the colors in MacBooks are much more vibrant and much deeper and saturated and so on and so forth. But that's just because the fact that MacBook is using display P3 for their color space. Meanwhile, other screens are using a much smaller color space, which is sRGB, which is the same with Rec 709, by the way, the same parameters.
Yeah. And while you're talking about that, there's a little function inside of this display pilot. You put a check in the box right here for ICC sync. It's a great little feature, and it keeps the color management in sync with the operating system if you're on a Mac, which it states right over here. So it's a nice little check in the box that makes your life a little bit easier. And if you have that not checked, you'll see as soon as you put a check in the box, kind of change, you'll see a shift in your color. I already had it checked off, so it's not gonna really adjust it now, but when you do it initially, you're going to see things kind of shift over, either become a little bit more cool or become a little bit more warm. So that's a great little addition that's inside of here to kind of keep things mapped based on what the overall intention of what Apple, color management was set up. So besides that, when you go down here to system settings, this right here will tell you usually about every single thing that's going on inside of this monitor. And now, because I'm using two different monitors, I can kind of jump in here and choose which monitor settings I want to work with. And this is basically like having a lot more control of your monitor right on your machine versus going through OS settings, which can sometimes trip you up, and sometimes you get buried in menus and menus and menus. And since we're talking about the Mac, those of you that upgrade every now and then, you'll notice that something that you knew in this menu is now buried 2 or 3 menus over. And this it just gets you a really quick way to access these settings without trying to find them inside of this vast system preferences. So that's one of the major benefits, I would say. And of course, if you get one of the designer monitors from BenQ, you get the hotkey puck. And I have, like I mentioned before, I have my color spaces mapped out, my P3 on 1, my 709 on 2, and then sRGB on 3. And you can change that to however you see fit. Simon, did you want to add anything about that?
No, I was just going to say the exactly same thing that Max just said as well. That loose balance of watching it, but then it's also complicated by the fact that some of the screens, especially on these Apple devices, now are P3 as well, which is good. It's better color, but it's changing how we tend to think about those devices.
Yes. There's a question, and I think Max, you just use you use this color profile quite often. The MBook and P3.
Yeah,
setting.
absolutely.
Maybe talk about that real quick.
I'm just using MBook for my preferences. Yeah, Kent, you're asking what is the difference between MBook and P3, and if you go deeper, there's even like a display P3 and DCI P3 available, right? The difference is like whenever you're setting it with MBook, anytime you change your display preferences. So if you, for example, go to your system settings, go to the display, you know that there are plenty of presets there, right? You can go to 1600 nits or XDR, or you can use like P3 ST2084, which is like 1000 nits with the P3 color space. The monitor will adapt. So it will follow whatever the display preferences presets that you apply. Meanwhile, if you're using like a display P3, it will just stay in display P3 in the monitor side while you have the color in your MacBook changed. So MBook will follow whatever preferences that you are setting in your system preferences. And the difference between DCI P3 and display P3, I think display P3 is like developed by Apple. So it's a P3 color space with some Apple flavor in it.
And everybody loves Apple flavor.
Yeah, I cannot point out like the technical how do you call it, detail on that, but that's what I know.
Hey Max, if I can add to the MBook mode built into the monitor, it's
Yes,
simulating the Retina color space. So if you're used to using a MacBook Pro Retina display and you switch over to a BenQ monitor, the MBook mode will simulate that color space that you're familiar with. But keep in mind, it won't have the glossy screen. It'll have that matte anti-glare screen on the BenQ side.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Ali.
So in respect to time, I think we're just going to go over some setups for color correction and color grading.
Yes.
I'll tackle the Adobe side. Max will tackle the Resolve side, and we'll talk about kind of the key differences and the way and the thinking behind it. There's been some significant changes to the way that works on the Adobe side, and I'll tackle a little bit about that, but I do want to tease that part 3 will be more of this deep dive into actually how you set up, and we can even talk about that in a few different applications. But today we're just literally going to get a quick overview so we can give you some time for Q&A. So I'll just hop in real quick into Premiere. All right, you still see my screen, I hope. And I already have my preferences open. And inside of my preferences, right, under General, and this is Adobe Premiere Pro latest version, right? So this is the 23, I'll tell you right now. Oh, let me quit out of preferences. So about Premiere Pro 2023, latest build 23.5.0, build 56. Now, let me clear out of that, go back here to my preferences and go to General. Now inside of here, you're gonna see there's a new option here, and this is a really interesting fix to the way that things were displayed before. This auto detect log video color space. This is great, especially when majority of the stuff you when you want to shoot and you want to be able to grade it. You ideally, it'd be great if you shoot in a log color space versus shooting in 709 and just handing over footage. You know, when you have the option, raise the ceiling a bit and shoot in log. So then that way you have that much more that you can work with instead of having all your points kind of set already with contrast. It's a little bit easier to work when you have that much more of a ceiling. So with that said, auto detect video, log video color space. And then also these were settings that were in there for quite some time now. I want to say over a year. This extended dynamic range when available, and then display color management and requires GPU. I have left these off in the past because they can cause some confusion. I'll explain a little bit more, but for right now, the best update that I've seen so far is this auto detect log color space. Now let me just hit OK, and then I'm going to just make a quick timeline here. Sequence, let's call this test. And then before I even get to that, let's just talk about this other setting here. That's, where are we? There it is, working color space, all right? And this is where things, there's another option here, and this is part of the latest, greatest update from Adobe. So working color space inside of Adobe, when we're thinking Adobe, this is where you're working in 709, right? When you're working in Resolve, you're working in log or S-log or whatever you shot and you're working in that, and then you're finalizing in 709. Here, you're working in 709. So it's a little bit different thinking when you're going in Adobe or you're working in Resolve. So inside of here, the only other options are your 2100 HLG and your 2100 PQ. These are your HDR setups, all right? But for right now, I'll just leave this as Rec 709. Also, so this auto tone mapping. So when you shoot stuff that's on an iPhone, and it's shot in Dolby Vision, right? Consumer Dolby Vision, or you shoot something on a Blackmagic camera, you shoot something on a Canon, and you want to marry all these things together in the same timeline without one looking super saturated and one looking very neutral. This option right here, this auto tone map media, kind of neutralizes everything and gives them the intended look. So still leaves you enough room to do your color grade, but it keeps everything looking more normalized. I think normalized would be a good way to describe it. And the idea is that you're not going to have one washed out, one super saturated, one looks like a video game, you know, and then all try to work together, and then you find yourself going into each individual piece of media and adding a LUT to it or making adjustments just so you can work. I know for a fact that, you know, before I knew what I knew about all this color space stuff, that I used to add LUTs to stuff, or even just put a LUT across the top for 709 just to keep moving, because there's nothing more annoying than looking at log footage for so long without seeing the beauty in the image. So the idea here is that we're working in 709. Auto tone map media is a brand new feature from 2023. And it really kind of normalizes all the media that's in your timeline, whether it's from a consumer phone or it's from an actual professional camera or even a DSLR or something like that. It'll neutralize everything, not neutralize everything, but normalize everything and make them all look basically the way they were intended to look when you were shooting it. So this is the setup inside of Premiere. Again, working in 709, or again, if you wanted to do HLG or PQ, those are your HDR setups. And then auto tone map, right? And then making sure that you turn on inside of your settings, general, and then turn on this feature right here for auto detect log color space. And that's basically when you shoot on your Sonys, your Canons, anything that's shooting log, it'll automatically translate that to if it's an S-Log3, and it'll make it viewable, and it'll put the black point in place so you can actually work. So that's the basic setup right here, and that all plays really well when you go into, where are we, right here, my lumetri color, right? And then everything right here you can still use without being overly saturated or without having to only do fine adjustments. And we'll talk a little bit more about this on the next session, and we'll talk more in depth about this really cool feature and amazing tool from Maxon, which actually will guide you through the whole color correction process to the point where a lot of people love to think that they know how to read color scopes, and not as many people actually know how to read them. But this is like the best cheat sheet I've ever seen to kind of make this kind of dummy proof for anybody across the board. So I will show that in great detail in our next session. But in the meantime, let me toss it over to Max, and he can go over basic setups in Resolve.
Well, thank you, Tony. I hope you can see my screen now, right?
We can see it.
Awesome. So I would like to walk you through some preps that you probably want to do when you are coming to Resolve and you want to color grade your piece, right? Those are like some project settings that you want to do. So to open the project settings itself, you can go to the file and open the project settings, or you can go to this, like this tiny gear icon over here. It will open exactly the same interface. The first thing that you want to do is that, changing the timeline resolutions, the correct resolutions that you want to work in. And then also, if you are using external reference monitor, you probably want to see like the video monitoring, the one that you want to see in your reference monitor, how how big are they? Like you can set the resolutions of your video monitoring here, and you can also set like the 4444 SDI. And if you're using like the more modern SDI cable, you probably want to opt into the single link instead of dual or quad. And you can set your data levels, either if you're working with video or full. And I like to set it to video and have the retained sub-black and super white data available, and set the video bit depth to 10-bit. Of course, you can change it to 8-bit, but who wants to do that, right?
No.
And here are some settings to do the proxies. If you're working with proxies, since mostly what I'm doing inside Resolve is that color grading, I don't work with proxies that much. I sometimes still cache some of my heavy nodes, but that probably you can do you can set up here in the optimized media format. And for me, I like to set it up to ProRes 422HQ, and the render cache is also 422HQ. And if you're working with external hard drive, if you want to dedicate an external scratch disk to store your cache and gallery, like the stills gallery inside Resolve, this is where you can like link them. So you can just click browse and point it to the scratch disk that you want to use. And the next one is the image scaling. By default, it is set to sharper, but if you have sometimes read the help here inside Resolve, there are some custom resizing filter that you can method that you can use. And in this case, I use length sauce, but since I'm not like resizing much what I'm with what I do daily, so it's actually not very important what I set here, but I like to just set it into length sauce.
It's basically a different type of math. Those are
Yes,
all different equations on how to
exactly,
calculate the pixels on your screen and how to make them bigger. But I think
exactly.
what's more important is maybe if you jump right into because we have a little bit of time left, we got
Yes.
to give away some things. So
The
maybe go
next
into the color
one,
management.
the big one is the color management. So
Mhm.
by default, if I like to set my timeline color space into the lock that I know and I feel familiar with. In this case, I set it into RA lock C and my output color space into Rec 709 gamma 2.4. But since we are in 2023 and we like to work in color manage, so there are two different flavors of color managements inside Resolve. You can use DaVinci Resolve color managements, or you can use ACES color management. So for example, if I set it to ACESicity, I can just set the color science into ACESicity, and I can set the newest versions of ACES. Don't worry, guys, we will talk about ACES more in depth in the next sessions, but this is basically how you set it up inside DaVinci Resolve project settings. So ACES versions, always choose the new one. And the input transform, if you have a piece that coming only from one camera, you can select that input transform here. For example, I have just one image coming from RA-Log-C. I'll just set it into RA-Log-C. And the output transform, this is like the display that you want to target. And in this case, I want to output my project to Rec 709, so I can just choose Rec 709, and I want to process my lot in AP1 timeline space. Don't worry about that. I'm probably talking like super nerdy term at the moment. We'll go into deeper understanding in the next sessions.
Yeah.
So what you need to like very important here that you need to set up is that 3D lookup table interpolations. By default, it is set to trilinear. And what you want to do, please change that into tetrahedral, because it is way much more robust math to interpolate your LUT instead of the trilinear. And once you're finished with this, so at the moment, I don't want to work with ACES. Let me just go back to previous one. Once you are finished with all your setup, all your color management settings, and all your project settings, what's nice is that instead of just hitting save, you can hit these three buttons over here, and you can set as a presets. And in this case, you can choose your option, save current setting as a preset, or create a new preset. And in this case, I already create a new presets. Max, that
Before
one.
you leave that screen, Max,
Yes.
you just did. All right,
Yeah.
go back to where it says color space really quick. And remember what we just talked about before I hand it off to you on the thinking in Resolve being something that came from being a color grading machine to now a full nonlinear edit. We just talk about how you're doing basically the reverse of what I'm doing in Adobe. You're working with output color space and timeline color space is being mapped in a technical sense.
Yeah. So in this case, it is separated. It is clearly separated. It is mentioning what timeline color space do you want to process all your adjustment in. In this case, I want to process everything in my log environment, my bigger color space, and I want to target the smaller color space for my display, or whatever display that you want to target. In this case, it could be P3 DCI if you are aiming for the theatrical.
Awesome. All right. So just to kind of tease what we're going to do next, like next session next, before we open it up to some Q&A, give away some prizes. We have some winners here, and I can't wait to announce that. But down the line, the idea of all this, I know we're talking about color space and we're talking about setups. Why that's so important is you have all this wonderful stuff. Let's say you have these wonderful monitors and you do all this setup and you do all this color settings to make everything look good. But then when you send it over to the next person, so I send all my images over to whether it's still images or if I'm working on a video timeline, and I send it over to Max, and on my screens, they look amazing. And then when I send it over to Max, they look like a video game, or they just look highly saturated and they look terrible, or they just don't look like they were intended to look. what we're going to put into practice in our next session is that when I hand something off to Max, my settings match what Max's settings are, or they're pretty darn close to it. So then Max will see what my intention is. And that's the main idea of calibrating your settings, calibrating your eyeball, calibrating your mind, and calibrating your environment, is that when you send this off to somebody else with the intention, whether it was the intention and you're the person working on it and you have to please a client, right? You have to make sure that they're happy with the image that you're providing them, or it's you who are generating this image or working on this image and passing it along. You want to make sure you pass along your intended vision and not some crazy version of it. So consistency is kind of the biggest part of that. And that's what we're going to talk about on our next session. So let me, I think without any further ado, Max, do you have anything?
Yeah, I just want to mention that in the next sessions, if you're really interested into learning more about the cool plugins, the cool tools that we are having here, that we are how do you call it, developing here at
Showcasing.
Maxon. Yeah. We will go deeper into that in the next session. So for example, I'll break down Magic Bullet looks, how you can use Magic Bullet looks, the interface, and spoiler alert, you'll get it in 5 minutes. That's very easy to use.
And the idea with all the Maxon and Red Giant plugins is that you kind of stay in the creative mind and you don't necessarily have to worry about settings. Everything is very practical, a lot of on-screen display stuff, and a lot of very simple menu items to help you get to a good starting point. So, and I'll talk about guided color correction. And again, it's a real eye opener. So if you think you know how to read a scope, that'll help you see how much you actually know. So, but without further ado, just to shout out one of our winners here for the Screen Bar Halo. Our winner is Frank S. So Frank S, you'll get an email from BenQ.
Congratulations.
Regarding, yes, congratulations. Can we get a round of applause for the winners at least? Anyway, I don't have my air horn right now. So anyway, Frank, congratulations. Thanks for tuning in. And Simon has our other winner for Maxon 1. And while we're waiting on that, Maxon 1, if you want to talk a little bit about it, Simon.
Yep, you should see my screen now. The Maxon 1 goes to Arif. So Arif with S as the initial for surname. Well done. And Maxon 1 is everything that Maxon does. So that's all the product Cinema 4D, Redshift, ZBrush, and all the Red Giant tools, as well as Forger. So there's a range of different tools for doing everything in post-production, from creating 3D to compositing and to color correction, most keyly in this particular case.
Which you will learn more next week. I mean, in next session, sorry.
No pressure next week. But yeah, I hope we answered a bunch of your questions. I know that we spent some extra time in certain areas, and feel free to reach out to us. Also, we have Maxon training team. Simon has the email address for Maxon training team if you want to see anything in particular with Maxon products, especially any of the Red Giant stuff.
Let us know if you've got any questions about that in advance. training@maxon.net. And that goes straight to us and the training team, so then we can include those in the next session. And just a question to Arif, who won Maxon 1, we'll reach out to you, or do we just need to know some details about you to how to get you your prize?
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ali, and thank you, BenQ, for having us. And
thank you very
we look
much.
forward to the closing session of these 3 webinars here, talking about calibrating your environment. Next, we're going to actually dive into the environment and deliver some images back and forth and see how well we calibrate it.
Yep.
So really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for tuning in. whether it's the middle of your day and it's a late lunch, or it's the end of your day and you're like just driving home, or you just put your work down and you watch, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
thanks
so
for the
much.
questions
It's a
as
great
well.
hang.
And thanks for the comment, Chadrick, about how much you enjoy Magic Bullet Looks, especially the diffusion effect. Love it.
Oh, we're on to something here.
Right.
Yeah, on behalf of BenQ, thank you guys. This was tremendous, and I sound greedy, but I'm excited for episode 3. I want more.
Hey, you got it.
Awesome.
You definitely got us another session.
Alrighty, guys. Until
Thank
then.
you, BenQ, for hosting. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, have
Good night.
a good one, everybody.
Have a good one. Until next time. See you.